We'll call the meeting to order and have a roll call.
Mr. Fiddler. Mr. Overland.
Here.
Mr. Love.
Here.
Mr. Burridge.
Here.
Mr. Huckabee. Mr. Alexander.
Here.
Mr. Burgess.
Here.
Mr. Regan.
Here.
We have a quorum to conduct business, and like to recognize some people that are here today. Gene Wallace and Randy are here, and they visit us all the time. Thank you guys for coming. And Gloria Peterson's here, and she's here a lot too. We don't recognize her enough. Thank you guys both for the work that you do. And of course, we want everybody to know that Gary is having a retirement party December the 17th at the AGC at 2 o'clock. And he's only had a job for 42 years. And I don't know how you've done that, but congratulations, and want to recognize that accomplishment. And go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, since you brought up Mr. Carino's retirement, I was going to mention this in my director's report, but yes, Gary Carino is retiring after 42 years with the Federal Highway Administration. And I just want to publicly acknowledge all the help that he has given to the Department of Transportation since he's been here in the state with the Federal Highway Administration as their division administrator. Gary and I, as you get to know people, Gary and I figured out that we both enjoy coaching softball, although he got out early and retired from that much before I did, since I'm still in it. But I admire him for his civic mindedness and helping the youth in Tennessee and other places that Gary has served the Federal Highway Administration. And I know that they will bring us another good division administrator, someone to follow in his footsteps while not replacing him, just follow him. I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Carino had a couple of words he might want to share with us, if we have time.
After 42 years, surely he's got something to say.
I would hope so. Mr. Carino, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Director. Appreciate it very much for the kind words and the kind thoughts. And I've had a lot to say for 42 years. And sometimes some people don't want to always hear it, but just the relationship that we've always had, you know, I feel that I can openly talk to the staff here and everybody sitting in this room, and we can openly talk about our business and whether we have different thoughts or on different issues, we can still work them out. I hate to see that Secretary Ridley's not here. I worked many years with him as he was director. And more than 10 years ago when I first came to Oklahoma, he asked me to come up to the podium and say a few words. He introduced me. Of course, he didn't really know me at that time, but he was very kind in introducing me. And I came up and I just said a few words. And all I said basically was, I'm very pleased to be in Oklahoma. I've worked in a dozen different states or so over my career, but I'm very pleased to be here in Oklahoma. Had never been here before, but I am pleased to be here when I said this more than 10 years ago. And that my goal was to make Oklahoma's transportation system the best it could be, the same as your goal. So our goals are the same, and we're going to work together to accomplish that. And I think I've tried to do that over the last 10 years. I think we have for the most part, and I've enjoyed it. I really have, and the successes that we've all had and worked on together, whether it was the recovery program, which was a good thing, the floods, which were not a good thing, but our offices worked together very closely in doing those special programs and in working together on getting the projects out, the much-needed projects. So it's been a pleasure for me to have been here for this time period, to work with you. Dan remembers he was chair when I first came here, but and working with everybody in this room. It's just been an absolute pleasure for me, and it humbles me to work among all of you, and I appreciate it. Thank you for all you've done, and best of luck with everything in the future. Thank you.
there's a noticeable absence of orange in the room. So I think it would be appropriate at this time to recognize the director for a special presentation.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to hold off on the special presentation for a few minutes until my director's report. We have some.
This is a different special presentation.
Oh, no. Well, that special presentation.
This is the important one.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. This is the important, we're doing the important one now? Okay, all right. Okay.
Spirit of Jackie Cooper is here.
He will.
It's been said that it's hard to be humble when you're a Sooner, but let it be known, we are not humble. The paint is fresh, but I think the next time that you smell fresh paint, none of us will be here. Normally, you give people time for rebuttal.
I think there's nothing to be said at this point, Mr. Chairman.
But, no,
Be sure and wash your hands after touching.
Yeah, I know. Everybody want to shake hands?
we don't want to hear any excuses about quarterbacks.
Why? That's all we got.
No, it was a great game, and it'll be great to see OSU down at the Sugar Bowl.
It will be.
We'll
It's
be
a
in
good-
Miami.
And then Phoenix, then Glendale, right? Because we expect something to happen.
All right.
There's a high level of expectation that you guys get this done.
That's true. We are favored.
Yes?
All right. We do need a picture, though. I mean, usually, got those orange ties and
Pistol Pete,
yeah.
been here.
Where's Boomer and Sooner? Where are those guys?
They were already all the way to Miami.
Okay, all right. Okay. They had to walk, so they headed out early, right?
Yeah.
We'll get back to business.
Okay.
And,
We will accept this and get it placed in the appropriate location.
no, we want it on that pole.
Oh, well, you're catching me, Mr. Chairman. You're catching me.
Are we going to go to this announcement?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Okay. This is the secondary announcement to the previous announcement. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, 2.5 weeks ago, at the annual AGC banquet, the department was provided with the Kent Fayro Award, or the Fayro Award. I think it was Kent Fayro Award, but the Fayro Award is given annually for the best bridge project in the state of Oklahoma. And this year, the bridge that we have talked about several times in this room on State Highway 51, the slide project, commonly referred to, was the winner of that award. Kevin has got set up over here the video, one of the videos that we made, and we just...
You need to look at the picture.
Yeah, I know. He's got his OU shirt on, I know. But this is a video one of the two videos that we did, and I think it gives a real perspective of this project. And so, Kevin, whenever you're ready.
The initial thought process of having accelerated bridge construction actually started when me and Gary Evans, the chief engineer at the time, we actually went to Salt Lake City to view the efforts that they had ongoing there regarding moving, not just sliding a bridge, but literally transporting a pre-built bridge in place.
Greg and Gary brought the idea of sliding a bridge into place back to Oklahoma and started working on finding the right location.
We needed a site where we could build the substructure beneath the existing structure and that, of course, helped plan or minimize the length of time that the traffic was going to be disturbed. So in this case, we found a bridge that was higher than it really needed to be in terms of hydraulics. And so we were able to build beneath the existing bridge, and that just helped us be able to actually do at this particular site.
Mark Williams is the engineering manager at the Sand Springs residency and the ODOT inspector on this project. I visited him during the pre-construction meeting last year.
What we'll do is we'll build the temporary deck portion of the bridge and a new bottom portion of the bridge while traffic is still on the bridge. And then when it comes time to put the deck on, we'll close the traffic down on the highway just for that portion, and we've allowed 21 days for the detour to be in place in that case instead of what would have normally been 180 to 200 days.
The new piers and abutments were constructed in the summer of 2013. Then, a temporary steel frame was built to hold up the new beams and deck. During that time, State Highway 51 remained open, and drivers did not experience any delays.
I like that because you're not subjecting the public to a changed condition that they have to get used to, and I believe that they'll find that this is a lot more tolerable to have a short-term interruption than it would be for us to have 180 days where they had to go around 25 miles plus on a detour.
Jumping ahead to September 2014. The beams and deck are finished, and now it's time to slide the 3 bridge sections into place. The contractor decides to slide the outer sections first, so he can finish the bridge approach and construct the guardrail while the middle section is being moved. The average time of the sliding process is 1 day per bridge section. After the bridge is striped and gets a final visual inspection from Mark and James, the road is ready to be opened again, only 10 days after it was closed.
We're very proud of the accomplishment. We're satisfied with the product that we got. Every time you do something new, there's a lot of things that you now know that you would do differently, but because there was a lot of engineering challenges to this project, a lot of construction challenges to this project. But overall, I think we got a real quality product. It rides really well, and the fact that it was done in 10 days shows that you can minimize this, so it's applicable in other locations besides this one.
As was pointed out in the video, and we never expected this to necessarily save the department money, but we did expect this to save on user interruption and user cost, which it did. When you compare 10, 11 days to 180 days of detours, it was a big difference for the traveling public. One of the things that was ironic, and I bring this up only because most people remember, but then Director Ridley stood up here and questioned why we would necessarily do this over water. Well, the irony was it was during a drought, and so there wasn't water anyway. So it worked out to everyone's advantage. Got it in place before the water came back. There was a delay in making the change because the barn swallows got the old bridge, and so we couldn't initiate any work and move forward with it. So when you hear about 2013 then 2014 when it actually happened, that was because the barn swallows got the bridge. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like for Randall White and Commissioner Regan to come up and accept this award on behalf of the AGC and celebrate a great accomplishment.
copy of that picture.
Yes.
He's conspicuously absent.
He's conspicuously absent.
Yeah.
We'll move to item 168, is the approval of the minutes of the Special Transportation Commission meeting of November the 9th, 2015. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
You have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander. Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Abstain.
We have the consent docket, which is item 169 through 172. If there's a commissioner that would like to pull an item out and discuss it separately, we will by unanimous consent, or we'll consider the consent document docket as it is, and we'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander. Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll hear item 173. Mr. Tigler.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Item 173 was a programming item, but at this time I would like to request that we cancel this item. The director will be up later in the commission meeting to discuss item 184 that will cover this bridge. So this was a bridge at I-40 in Rockwell. It was apparently hit back in October, and this was going to be an item to go ahead and program that. Last Wednesday evening, this same bridge was hit once again, and the damage has obviously gotten worse. So that's why I'm requesting this one to be canceled at this time.
Item 173 is moved off the agenda. Item 174.
Item 174 are engineering contracts. I have 5 parts this month. Part A is a statewide contract to revise and update our standard specifications that used to be the 2009 highway construction standards, and also work with OTA to come up with their standard specifications for the turnpike. That is with Kraft and Tullen Associates for $158,400. Part B is also all districts. This is to provide bridge inspection quality assurance services for routine bridge inspections for both on-system and off-system, and it's also including the turnpike bridges. This is with Volkert Incorporated for $1 million. Part C is Oklahoma County in Division 4. This is to provide engineering, preliminary engineering for I-35 from Kilpatrick Turnpike to Waterloo Road with Poe and Associates. This is for $2,034,738. Part D is Dewey County. This is in Division 5. This is for engineering and construction plans for State Highway 34. This is to replace the Canadian River Bridge. It's with Atkins North America for $889,228. And finally, Part E in Tulsa County in Division 8. This is for engineering and construction plans for US 64 from South 161st Street in Bixby going south and east to Mingo Road. It's a 2-mile long project. This is with Leidos Engineering for $752,486. Can I answer any questions that you may have at this time?
Heard the presentation for item 174.
Move for approval.
Have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander. Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll hear 175, the engineering contract supplements.
Okay, I have 5 parts this month also. Part A is a statewide. This is to perform services that will include submittal plans, specifications, estimates for rehab of structurally deficient bridges. This is supplementing White Engineering Associates for $200,000. Part B is in McCurtain County, District 2. This is for additional services to develop final plans for State Highway 3. This is with H.W. Lochner for $18,557. Part C in Dewey County in Division 5 for services, additional engineering services to finish the construction plans for roadway and bridge for US 270 and State Highway 3 with CEC Corporation for $126,000. Part D is listed as K and Love counties. It also included additional counties. I would like to change that to multiple counties, please. This is to perform additional engineering services to develop final construction plans and site development for the ports of entry. This is with Leidos Engineering for $55,300. And then finally, Part E in Rogers County in Division 8. This is for additional services and final construction plans for State Highway 20 with Garver Engineering for $1,311,345. Trying to answer any questions that you may have this morning.
Heard the presentation. Mr. Tiegler, what's your pleasure?
Motion approved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll hear the lettings, item 176. Mr. Atkins.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, item 176 consists of the final February, the tentative March, and the tentative April 2016 bid openings, and the department recommends approval of item 176.
You've heard the presentation.
Motion to approve item 176.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Raymond, you can present the change orders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'd like to present item 177, parts A through Z. These represent the change orders on projects with a cumulative total of $50,000 or less. This item is presented for your information only. No action is necessary, but I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, move on.
Thank you. I'd like to present item 178, parts A through M. These represent the change orders on projects with a cumulative total greater than $50,000, and your approval is recommended.
Make a motion.
We have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 179, Mr. Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Item 179 is a change order for additional appropriations on an emergency rock slide crossover project in Murray County. It's for $21,622.39. Additional appropriations were approved to fund the addition of a pay item for a guardrail in treatment and the overrun of the traffic surveillance police pay item in the contract. This emergency contract was executed in June 2015 with Overland Corporation in the amount of $510,447.88. This change order will fund the overrun of the planned quantity for the traffic surveillance to monitor traffic during the period of time that the crossovers were in service. Additionally, a new pay item was added to the contract to replace a damaged GET prior to reopening the northbound lanes. This change order was approved by the Division 7 engineer under his authority, since the cumulative total of change orders on this construction contract have not exceeded $50,000. This item is for your information, and no action of the commission is necessary. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
We'll note your tie. Thank you for your comments.
Loud and proud.
Item 180, Mr. Delf.
Make the Dulce adjustment. Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Item 180 are our recommendations from the November 19th bid opening. It is recommended that the following items from the letting referred to by call order be awarded. It's call orders 10, 30, 50, 60, 65, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 180, 190, 200, 210, 220, 240, 250, 260, 270, 280, 290, 295, 300, 347, 354, 356, 360, 380, 390, 410, 420, 430, 440, 460, 490, 517, 520, 530, 580, 590, 615, 617, 620, and 630. It is recommended that the following items from the letting referred to by call order be rejected. That's call orders 495, call orders 514, and call order 610, both in lieu of tied projects. This concludes the recommendations for award, and your approval is recommended.
Heard the presentation.
Motion approved.
Have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll hear item 181. We'll note the boots.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we have in front of you a copy of our updated 5-year plan. We have made some changes in the printing of the book this year. It is still broken down by year. We don't have tabs in them. We're still making improvements on our print. We'll have better copies for you. But the second part of the breakdown in this is it's broken down by ODOT field division, so you can identify your projects, your area's projects a little bit easier. In the plan this year, we anticipate spending about $190 million of our CIRB balance that we have with the projects for the lettings, and then also with engineering and right-of-way and utility relocation. Overall, the plan in the next 5 years is we anticipate spending about $916 million, just short of $1 billion in our CIRB 5-year plan. Quite an accomplishment there. 439 bridges in our plan. Of those, 327 are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete bridges. We also have 52 bridges in there that are utilizing crosstown bridge beams. We're still making good progress utilizing those beams from when we took down I-40 crosstown, and we're still putting those into place on a county system. Also, we have 875 miles of roads that are going to be either reconstructed or structurally overlaid in our plan here. If you have any questions, be happy to answer those.
Heard the presentation.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Well, just on behalf of all the county commissioners, thank you, because they've worked hard on this. I know you guys have worked hard on it. It's quite an accomplishment.
Staff put a lot of work in this with them, and the CEDs are a very big help for us. Circuit Engineering District, a very big help for us assembling this plan. So, big team effort.
Any other comments? Certainly recognize the increased efforts to better utilize what's been made available to the counties and get some of that money spent. Great job. Call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Overland.
Yes.
Mr. Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll move to item 184, which is the addendum to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Item 184 is a declaration of emergency, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'll read it into the record. On December 2nd, 2015, an eastbound overheight vehicle struck the Rockwell Avenue Bridge over I-40, doing significant damage to 2 of the 5 beams and damaging the cross-frame members. The west beam was knocked out of horizontal alignment 10 to 12 inches over a 30-foot length, tearing and cracking the web. The 4th beam west was knocked out of alignment 8 inches over a 15-foot length, also tearing and cracking the web. Division 4 forces are restricting traffic to 1 lane northbound and posting a weight limit of 10 tons. In accordance with Title 61, Oklahoma State Statute, Section 130, and Commission rules, on December 3rd, 2015, I declared an emergency situation exists for the safety of the traveling public and authorized the preparation of plans and the bidding of an emergency contract. Repair plans are being developed for release this morning, and actually they have been turned in. Bid opening for the repair, estimated to cost approximately $350,000, is scheduled for December 10th, which is Thursday. So we're going to take bids and award the contract on Thursday, and they will start work shortly thereafter, possibly Friday. This information is an information item only, and no action is required.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Anybody have any further questions? Seeing it, there are no further questions, we'll hear the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great day for all of transportation across this country. Last week, Congress passed, and on Friday, the President signed the FAST Act, giving the country, for the first time in a number of years, a long-term transportation solution. Originally, as the bill came out of the Senate, chaired by Senator Inhofe, it was a 6-year bill. The final measure out of the conference committee is a 5-year, fully funded bill which will provide new transportation dollars for every state in the country, as well as reforms and streamlining of the environmental, some of the environmental issues. And also for those here in Oklahoma, there's been an ongoing issue with church and civic organization signs, and that's been rectified. So we're extremely pleased with the way everything worked out. There's been a lot of discussion about how much more money that the department will receive. Don't know yet. We know that every state is going to receive an increase. Our portion of the annual allotment or allocation to the Federal Highway Administration is going to remain the same at 1.6% of the total. But as I said, the pie is bigger, so we're going to get a bigger piece of that pie. As we go through and the Federal Highway Administration and the USDOT determine how much each state's going to receive, then we will have a better number. I could speculate, but I don't want to speculate. I don't want anyone to draw a conclusion from anything that I say as the gospel. So we'll wait to get the final numbers, but certainly there will be more money for cities, counties, and the state of Oklahoma going forward. I want to acknowledge, as I mentioned Senator Inhofe previously, but his tireless effort. And please remember that the last time that this country had a long-term transportation policy and financing legislation, he was the chairman, and that was in 2005. He returns to the chairmanship and delivers yet another long-term package. Also, on the House side, we were fortunate to have Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen serve as a conference committee member, and so we had a real Oklahoma flavor, if you will, to the effort, and we're obviously very pleased about that. But both of those gentlemen have the country at heart, and so while Oklahoma was taken care of, certainly their outlook for the entire country was was primary on their minds. Throughout this whole process, which has been very long, because we've been working on this probably since 2009, 2010, throughout this entire process, the Oklahoma delegation has been right on. And I know that while we may not hear of some of the heroics that have been going on behind the scenes, they have been going on. I can remember when Senator Lankford was Congressman Lankford, he had an extreme interest in some of the environmental concerns that we raised, and he and his staff have been working in that regard to make that better. Another person that I want to mention who's been battling this for a long time is Secretary Ridley, who couldn't be with us here today. But I know, because he's drugged me up and down that hill we call Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. many a times, and we've stood in front of the desk of many members, both from this state and other states. And Gary has been laser focused on getting something done. And I wish he were here to congratulate him. I did the other day, and I will again later this afternoon. But I think this is a real milestone for Gary as the Director and the Secretary of Transportation here in Oklahoma. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have about the FAST Act.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Well, we certainly congratulate you guys for all your hard work. Certainly the Secretary and our congressional delegation. We should recognize there's no permanent funding changes in place for the bill. Right. You know, we are still funding transportation from other sources, and we all need to keep that in mind because it is a shortcoming of the funding mechanisms that are in place.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
Nobody has anything for the Director?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I have a couple other things.
Certainly.
Okay. Shannon was just up here presenting you with the CIRB, and I appreciate the comments from the Commission, recognizing the effort it takes to put that CIRB plan together. It is, as Shannon articulated, and you guys well know, it's a culmination of a collaborative effort of the county commissioners, of which there are 231, the circuit engineering districts, of which there are 8, and his staff. And it takes a great deal of effort to make that happen. And I just want to congratulate Shannon, because I know that one time earlier this year, he thought he had it, but it didn't quite come together like he thought, and so he went back to the grindstone, and he and his staff produced what I think is a great plan, something we can deliver on. So thank you, Shannon, I appreciate that. One more thing, or two more things. I want to acknowledge this last week here at ODOT, we had a fundraising opportunity. And it pitted a bit of a bedlam tent to it. So, but the more important thing was that the agency here primarily in this building raised in excess of $2,000 so that we could fill out our angel tree and support ODOT families and others in the community that need help at Christmas time. And so I would just want to congratulate this agency for their continued civic mindedness and willing to help others in need. So congratulations to everybody. And then shortly after this meeting, I'm going to be proud to carry this ball out there and have Russell Hewlin and George Raymond, because they're going to need to do this. This will be the last good moment they have for a while. So, because and that goes back to that fundraising thing. They might have come out on the short end of that deal. But anyway, so I'll carry it out there if they'll put it up on the pole. You go with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Did we get all of the orange sandblasted off of it?
I think it's sufficiently sandblasted, yes, sir. I don't see any orange anywhere. I've got one more thing, Mr. Chairman. Back in January of 1972, a young man walked into this agency and into the lives of a lot of people here at this agency. He has made a profound difference in many of us in the way we do our work. Bob Rose came to work that day, and he has set about a tremendous career that spans 44 years. This is Bob's last commission meeting. He's one of these guys that just wants to get on his horse and ride out west and just wave as he goes, but I can't exactly do that. I understand he doesn't want a party, so a party we will not have. But I will tell you that except for a short stint here in the central office, of which he could not hardly stand being here, but he did it anyway for the good of the cause. He spent 17 months, I believe it was, and Bob would have to correct me because he's got it in his head, but he spent 17 months here as our chief engineer in amongst a 29-year term as a division engineer. 29 years. I don't know that I know a division engineer that's had that position for 29 years. Now, I was visiting with the commissioner earlier, Commissioner Burgess, about Bob, and haven't I talked him into staying? Well, I've tried. I've been hanging on his leg for like the little grandkid that I carry around occasionally, walking around, but I don't think he's going to stay. Bob has been a mentor to many, a coach to everyone, and a real gentleman throughout it all. Bob, congratulations.
Could I say just a word, Mr. Chairman? Bob, I know you're not much for giving speeches, although I've heard you give some really good speeches, especially at those public hearings. You really know how to dance. You may not look like you know how to dance, but you know how to dance. I just want to say personally, it has been a privilege. I appreciate all the times you told me yes, and believe it or not, I appreciate all the times you told me no, because it turns out you were right. I appreciate your professionalism and how you carried yourself through our little endeavor. And I can honestly say, for those of you that know Bob, you already know this, but I can say that your biggest concern has always been the traveling public and this agency and tax dollars and how they're well spent. And you've been a good steward of those tax dollars. And I've really enjoyed working with you, and I can't begin to explain how much I'm going to miss you. I told everybody I was had the sniffles, but really I've been crying all night. Thank you, Bob.
Bob, his head's going up and down. I think he wants to say something.
I don't think he wants to say anything, but we would certainly welcome him to the microphone if he chose to. But I think,
Bob, come on up here and give us a word.
The chairman says, Mr. Wilson.
I tell you what, I think I was, I think I was about 35 when I met Bob. So that was many, 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 many years ago as a young commissioner. But I want to tell you something, Bob. The credibility that you possess is unlike a lot of people. And, you know, all the things you've done, one thing that was always special to me is just the amount of credibility that you have and the leadership and guidance that you've given, sometimes when you didn't even know it. So what an asset you've been. And when you speak, people do listen. And if you choose not to today, that's fine. But everybody always likes to hear from you. And we appreciate your time here.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I know Bob will take a moment to visit with everyone individually, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Did anyone have anything for Mr. Patterson before we let him go? Since we don't, one more time we'll recognize the great man that Bob Rose is, and without anything else, we'll hear a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fiddler.
Aye.
Mr. Oberlin.
Yes.
Mr. Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. Burridge.
Yes,
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
we are adjourned.